The Trump administration is planning for something much bigger than what they've been doing so far against the Ansarullah movement inside of Yemen and their support for Israel for the past several months. Now, with the deployment of the US aircraft carrier Carl Vinson and its strike group declared to be joining the USS Harry S. Truman in the region, you're talking about plans that are much bigger than what we've seen so far, with steps being taken on the ground. The official report about the Carl Vinson strike group joining the USS Harry S. Truman are coming with statements like, we need to make sure that the supply lines are safe. We need to make sure that we are available to carry out any missions. They're not necessarily talking about direct attacks against Ansarullah or Iran. However, all of the moves on the ground that Trump has been taking, especially against Yemen, and the statements that he's making against Iran, are showing that these people are indeed implementing moves on the ground to prepare for a very large strike. A few days back, I spoke about the need of the United States to deploy a new aircraft carrier and a strike group, and how that could potentially be linked to the USS Harry S. Truman having difficulties after multiple strikes by Ansarullah in Yemen. But there were other options too. Those other options were, USS Harry S. Truman is not doing enough against Yemen to be effective or to stop their attacks against the United States forces in the region or Israel, and that they needed more support. And another thing was, they need to add more forces to prepare for an attack against Iran, because Donald Trump said that Iran bears responsibility for every missile launched by the Houthis, and he's telling them either deal or bombs now, alongside, of course, the Trump administration giving an open check, total free hand for the Israeli terror state to commit all of this barbarism inside of the Gaza Strip, with dozens of people being slaughtered every single day now in front of the whole world. So, Iran, from their perspective, they're also preparing. There was a report in Israel today, in the Israeli newspaper Ma'ariv, that Israel has already 1,000 hypersonic ballistic missiles, aimed at Dimona, the place that is reported to be the house of the Israeli shady nuclear project that they do not reveal any information about, and that they're not asked to reveal any information about by those same countries who scrutinize every other country's nuclear project apart from Israel. How is all of that linked to Gaza? That is very much linked to Gaza. All of the tensions in the region are due to Gaza, are due to what Israel is committing inside of Gaza. Israel agreed to a ceasefire, it breached it. It's stopping any sort of aid for over 2 million people inside of the Gaza Strip. No food, no medical supplies, no water, no electricity, no nothing. And it's slaughtering them, starving them to death and killing them brutally in one of the most barbaric acts of war we have seen in history. What Israel is doing now, this is what people need to understand very well. In history, Ansarullah, they started their attacks again because of the Israeli aggression again against the Gaza Strip and the blockade against the innocent civilians. Iran, on the other hand, despite them giving options for talks, options for diplomacy, space for the United States administration and Israel and other countries to, and the mediators, of course, to reach a deal, nothing is happening. What do? They prepare themselves. They told the United States and Israel, prepare for a very large attack. Now Israel's saying 1,000 missiles ready against Israel, and the IRGC and other leaders in Iran saying that, all of the United States forces in the region, approximately 50,000 personnel, expensive equipment, and air bases and general bases as well, will be under attack. And multiple statements coming from Iran that they will be reviewing their nuclear doctrine. In Iran, there is a fatwa issued by the supreme leader against a nuclear weapon, but multiple calls came from Iran and from policymakers inside of Iran to review this policy. And now also, there was a report that Ali Larijani, one of the most senior figures in Iran, said that if we are attacked, then we're immediately working to get a nuclear bomb. So, you don't need to talk. We don't need to reach a deal. We already had a deal before. Donald Trump came out of that deal, and now he's trying to bully us into another deal after he unilaterally went out. And after we spent all of these resources and all of these efforts to try and reach that deal, and we have previously with the Obama administration, but again, Donald Trump, for the sake of Israel, withdraws from that nuclear agreement with Iran. Gaza is the key point. The United States is giving Israel a free hand to continue all of this barbarism and is expecting every other country to submit to the will of Israel. And now there are even more revelations about this proposal coming from the United States and the counter proposal that Israel gave to continue this ceasefire in Gaza. And guess what one of the recent proposals were in terms of Gaza? That Hamas, as a gesture of goodwill, needs to release an Israeli-American terrorist who was serving in the Israeli Army of Terror on the 7th of October and was taken as a prisoner of war to Gaza. They need to release him as a gesture of goodwill to the Trump administration, and then Trump would come out with a statement. I mean, hopefully, of course, nothing is confirmed, but maybe Donald Trump would come out with a statement, saying, "Oh, thank you, Hamas, for the gesture of goodwill, and maybe we can go ahead now." And then Hamas needs to release someone every 10 days. No confirmation, no guarantees about ending the war, no nothing. And not just that, the counter proposal that came from Israel recently, according to recent reports coming out just now, it included more Israeli demands that take us back before the agreement started taking place back in January. So they're going back against the initial ceasefire deal that Joe Biden came up with, that Trump pushed Netanyahu to agree to, and Witkoff as well pushed him to agree to. And now with all their audacity, the Israelis are withdrawing from that agreement. They are having more proposals to continue. All of that means that Netanyahu and Israel, they are not interested in any sort of ceasefire. And neither is the United States administration led by Donald Trump. And they're expecting everyone to submit. And the tensions that are happening now are primarily due to Israel and the United States. No one else. Yemen is not causing any problems. Yemen are going ahead and implementing, taking action, and doing something that's a duty for them. That's actually supposed to be a duty on every country that has any sort of respect for humanitarian laws and international laws. Imposing a blockade on a war criminal entity with leaders wanted for the ICC, war criminals leading a genocidal entity. Yet the United States administration, led by Donald Trump, is having all of these moves for the sake of Israel, and now sending a new strike group to the region, supposedly to boost up the presence of the United States, making sure supply chains are fine and preparing for any action. Well, this is no ordinary preparation. Firstly, the United States under Trump, it has been conducting more attacks than the Biden administration. meaning Trump is a deadlier president than Biden, at least when it comes to actively participating US forces, not just support for Israel. We all know that the United States is complicit and that the United States administration is the biggest contributor to the genocide. But on the ground, the level of strikes, the consistency of strikes, the civilian casualties in Yemen under the Trump administration are far greater, especially considering the fact that he's only been in office for a couple of months now, than it was under Biden. So where's all the talk about the man of peace, a man wanting a Nobel Peace Prize? So we're not looking at an administration that is genuinely interested in any sort of peace. We're looking at an administration looking for more war and chaos for the sake of a genocidal entity. And now China and Russia are starting to speak up, meaning that they feel that there's something being cooked by the United States administration. Russia's warning outright against any strike on Iran, and China's calling for diplomacy. And by the way, we need to understand what the Chinese mean when they call for diplomacy. China doesn't outright have very blunt statements in relation to wars, and anything they might actually have very strong feelings towards or standings against, positions against. The fact that they're saying, oh, we need to solve this diplomatically, that's showing a grave concern from China. And that means that China is on the line already. China is the biggest consumer of Iranian oil. And of course, we already know the strategic coordination, cooperation agreements between Iran and Russia, and Iran and China. And the fact that both of these countries are speaking up now means that the United States has no good plans for the coming future.